Hello and welcome. Today I'll be diving into section 5.4 of the first edition of the Standard for Change Management published by the Association of Change Management Professionals. This is perfect if you're prepping for the Certified Change Management Professional exam or if you just want to deepen your understanding of change management. Thanks for tuning in. Let's dive into section 5.4, execute the change management plan. The processes in this group focus on the implementation of work and actions in the detailed change management plans. The work in this area is required to achieve the expected benefits of the change management implementation. The purpose of the Execute the Change Management Plan is to address the implementation processes for performing the change activities by monitoring, measuring, and controlling delivery against baseline plans. The Change Management Plan defines how internal controls will be applied. It involves managing people, stakeholders, and sponsors and other resources while developing employee competencies through learning, development, and knowledge transfer. Executing the change management plan involves alignment of strategic objectives, risk identification, and mitigation and modification of the plan as needed. There are two subcategories: execute, manage, and monitor implementation of the change management plan, and modify the change management plan as required. Let's take a dive into the first section: execute, manage, and monitor the implementation process, beginning with executing the resource plan. Executing the coordination of finances, people, information, and physical resources is necessary to ensure delivery of the resource plan. During execution, the planned budget for the change will be controlled so that the accountable spending to meet the need of deliverables can take place. It may be necessary to review the planned budget in the light of additional information as execution begins. This may require an increase, decrease, or reallocation of the budget between spending categories, executed through a controlled request process and approved by appropriate stakeholders. The spending process should be documented and understood by all involved, especially those providing control over the spending. Controls will include type and amount of spending. Regular reports of spending against budget should be prepared for senior stakeholders to ensure full transparency. Human resource management is a strategic function for identifying the most effective use of people. Expected benefits can be delayed, diminished, or never realized if the proper human resources are not available when they need to deliver and embed the change. Resource availability conflicts may occur due to competing priorities, coinciding tasks, or unavoidable circumstances. These conflicts may require rescheduling activities and could result in changes in resource requirements for current or subsequent activities. Procedures should be established to identify such shortages, facilitate resource reallocation, and reduce the likelihood of consequence of resource availability and conflicts. Specific role definitions should be defined along with their required skill sets, experience levels, and engagement durations. The engagement process for different types of resources, such as permanent employees, contractors, and consultants, need to be fully defined, understood, and documented to enable execution of the human resources plan. Human resources should be recruited, selected, and oriented to the project and integrated with the change team in order to build change capability and support the resources plan. Information resources management involves the systematic process for creating, storing, sharing, and disseminating data records, documents, and reports related to the change management effort. Processes should be established for authorizing with which stakeholder groups can create, review, update, or delete certain types of records, documents, and reports. It is expected and acceptable that confidential and other types of records, documents, and reports would not be accessible to stakeholders impacted by the change. Information repositories such as electronic file sharing systems, collaborative websites, and physical documents can provide appropriate security access for specific stakeholder groups. Organization resources may provide assistance include the IT department and the legal records retention function. Physical resource management involves ensuring the availability of suitable facilities, equipment, and supplies. The primary functions include identifying what is required and ensuring that suppliers provide equipment and materials needed to deliver the change. It also involves managing the purchasing relationship, which includes negotiating with suppliers to reach agreements that provide value and meet organizational requirements, keeping accurate records of materials, and taking appropriate action in the event of problems with the materials. Processes should be established to monitor physical resources and their performance. This process will ensure the standards of service and delivery are maintained, physical resources are used efficiently, and suppliers are delivering the desired activities and outcomes. Resources such as buildings, rooms, technology, and other physical needs should be acquired to support the execution of the plan. Physical resources must meet the needs specified during planning and cover areas such as quality, quantity, and duration. They should be engaged or acquired through an agreed upon and documented control process to ensure that needs are met and value is obtained. In this group, your inputs will be the change management plan, project schedule and plan, and resource plan. Your outputs include change management plan, financial resources update and impact reports, human resources update or impact reports, information resources update or impact reports, physical resources update or impact reports. The success of a change management program requires effective implementation of the communications plan. The audience and its specific characteristics, such as the size of the organization, location of workers, level of change resistance, serve as the basis for customizing the messaging and delivery methods. The message should be crafted considering the culture of the stakeholders and organization and be aligned with the objective for each communication event. When effective, the stakeholders are able to build awareness, establish understanding, and define core responsibilities around the delivery of messages. Messages are delivered through the method deemed most effective for the communication. Further, messages are delivered at a specific phase in the project to ensure that stakeholders receive the correct messages at the correct time. Communication subject matter experts may provide guidance in the delivery of the communications and regularly assess effectiveness. The feedback channels and mechanisms identified in the communication strategy should be executed as they provide stakeholders with the opportunity to ask questions and provide updates on how they are experiencing the change. Here, your inputs include the project plan, communication plan, and stakeholder engagement plan. Your output includes the communication delivery. Sponsorship is most successful when leaders recognize the people side of change and visibly participate with stakeholders throughout the project. The change sponsor builds awareness directly with stakeholders regarding the need for a change. The change management team reviews the role of sponsorship with each leader involved in the change initiative and provides change management coaching where needed. Coaching should address the need for sponsors to understand their role, responsibilities, and expectations and include identifiable actions that visibly support successful change, examples of good sponsorship activities, and common sponsor mistakes. The sponsor should also receive prepared communication and guidance for delivering messages to stakeholder groups. The change management lead should provide the sponsor with regular updates on the change initiative status. Here, your inputs include the sponsorship plan, communication plan, and stakeholder engagement plan. Your outputs include sponsor activities and sponsor competency building activities. Effective stakeholder engagement is critical to ensure successful execution of the change management plan. The stakeholder engagement plan establishes the tasks that need to be executed to ensure that all stakeholders understand and adopt the change. Executing the plan will significantly reduce uncertain consequences and identify the benefits of the change for stakeholders. Effective plan execution will enable stakeholders to adopt the change swiftly and with lowered resistance while understanding its benefits to the organization and individual stakeholders. Addressing and managing resistance to ensure successful transition to the future state should engage a number of leaders within the organization. Key aspects of job roles, performance management, learning needs, and organizational development resources should be considered and reviewed regularly throughout the change initiative. These reviews should involve regular communication with leaders and supporting functions as needed to ensure resistance is properly managed. Here, your inputs include the stakeholder engagement plan, sponsorship plan, and communication plan. Your outputs include stakeholder engagement activities, sponsor engagement activities, and resistance management activities. Change initiatives require active management of the learning process to increase stakeholder skills and develop required competencies through appropriate learning activities. Learning and development may include training and development activities, as well as evaluating knowledge, skills, and attitudes before and after learning activities. Learning objectives should be clearly stated, measurable, realistic, and appropriate for the level of the learner. They should be consistent with the objectives of the change management strategy and define what the learner will know or be able to do because of the learning activity. They should provide a basis to evaluate learner achievement. As stated in the Learning and Development Plan, each learning group has a unique curriculum that will be executed. The first step in executing the plan is to ensure the learning materials support the curriculum that has been developed. That includes job aids, user manuals, and quick reference guides. Second, the logistics of the learning activity for each group must be completed according to the delivery method and timeline. That is, booking a conference room and setting up an online meeting. Lastly, the curriculum is delivered to the specified group according to the plan. As stated in the Learning and Development Strategy, there may be other resources such as an outside vendor delivering the learning activity. Measuring the success of learning and development activities demonstrates whether the participants learned the necessary skills. The objectives developed prior to delivery will serve as the basis for future evaluation. Not all learning activities will develop the expected benefits, possibly because a lesson was misunderstood, misapplied, or was not applicable to the situation or audience. Learning activities do not produce the expected benefits, should be reevaluated and then modified or removed. Learning measurement should determine what knowledge was obtained, the skills that were developed or improved, and the frequency and effectiveness with which the new knowledge and skills are used on the job. It may also identify if attitudes have changed. A variety of methods can be used to evaluate the effects of learning, including learner reactions, supervisor observations, and performance appraisals. The evaluation should show both the tangible and intangible indicators resulting from the learning and development activities. Tangible indicators include skills and knowledge, job performance, productivity, response time, sales volume and service levels, and requests for help. Intangible indicators include effective communication, quality of decision-making, conducive teamwork, job satisfaction, and stress rate. Here, your inputs include the Learning and Development Plan, Change Resources Roles and Responsibilities Plan, and supporting learning and development materials. Your output includes learning and performance evaluation reports. Accurate measurements provide an indication of the level of stakeholder adoption, the degree of stakeholder preparedness, their knowledge and ability, and the success of the change project. The measurements should be communicated to all sponsors and project leads. Processes can be adapted based on the measurement outcome to ensure that goals are met. This process involves tracking and measuring the benefits against targets to ensure changes are aligned with organizational objectives and expected benefits as described in the business case. It involves measuring against the baseline data and target, charting progress, and reviewing the effectiveness of the benefits management. It also includes informing stakeholders of progress in benefits realization and assessing the performance of the changed organizational operations against performance baseline. Progress must be continually monitored during execution to test and assess stakeholder awareness of change and therefore the success of communications, to understand the change benefits and determine the wider change impact. This monitoring can provide an estimate of the stakeholder engagement with and support of the change. Monitoring progress allows the change management team to report results and track the progress by individual stakeholder segments using appropriate techniques and by monitoring staff turnover, absences, tardiness, and other factors. Effective monitoring of progress provides the necessary information for the committee of stakeholder representatives to make decisions to adjust the course of execution. The change management lead should report frequently and honestly on the status of the change. This individual should describe progress in the previous period, impediments currently being encountered, and potential barriers to progress. Communications should use appropriate channels. Stakeholder feedback. Feedback from stakeholders provides evidence of benefits achieved to date, those still to be achieved, and any that are no longer valid. Benefits realization. Achieving adoption of plan changes by impacted stakeholders is the first step toward benefits realization. Adoption of plan changes or successfully changing the way in which people think, act, and behave to align with the future state should result in achieving organizational outcomes. That is, improved customer experience, improved efficiency, increased skill level of employees. When combined, these intended organizational outcomes should lead to realization of the intended benefits outlined in the business case. That is, increased sales, cost savings, improved market share. Executing the plan for measurement and reporting of the progress towards readiness, adoption, achievement of organizational outcomes, and benefit realization should involve participation from the impacted business unit in order to gain input and agreement on the measurements and results. This involvement is also important in facilitating the potential transfer of accountability for measurement and reporting required for the time extending beyond the change practitioner's involvement. Here, your inputs include the change management plan and measurement and benefit realization plan. Your outputs include measurement and benefit realization reports and benefits realization activities. Change must be continually managed to achieve sustained results through the adoption of change and the associated values, principles, and processes. Executing the sustainability plan should trigger activities and mechanisms required to cultivate a culture that will sustain the change once it has been implemented and determined to be effective to help ensure there is not a retreat to a prior current state condition. Activities and mechanisms should minimally include the following components: communication, metrics tracking, performance management, rewards and recognition, sustaining ownership, and continuous improvement. Communication. Mechanisms for persuasive communication and ongoing socialization of the change, rites of parting, such as saying goodbye to the old ways of doing things, and rites of enhancement, including the acknowledgement of quick wins and continued adoption. Metrics tracking. Consistent and effective process for sustaining measurement and results reporting to track progress and ensure results. Performance management. Consistent process for observing and objectively measuring sustained behaviors and attitudes, including the performance appraisal process, promoting, demoting, and transferring, and learning and development. Rewards and recognition. Program of intrinsic and extrinsic incentives to sustain achieved behaviors and attitudes. Sustaining ownership. Consistent process for ensuring sustained ownership of the change through the ongoing transfer of experience and knowledge. And lastly, continuous improvement. Mechanisms for responding to changing requirements and implementing improvements based on feedback, observations, and metrics. Here, your inputs will be the sustainability plan and measurement baselines. Your outputs include communication events, benefits reviews, business performance reports, and evaluations and reviews. Modify the change management plan as required. The change management plan will generally require modification throughout the change life cycle in order to ensure that outcomes remain correctly aligned with the organization's needs. Change leaders need to review objectives and make the necessary adjustments to maintain momentum and deliver results. Adjustments may include adding, eliminating, or realigning change program components to reinforce the change or decrease or accelerate change in response to internal and external pressures. Changes to deliverables should be controlled through formal procedures that are aligned with the organization's change control framework. Once a change to the change management plan or strategy has been approved, then the decision should be communicated to all relevant stakeholders. Here, your inputs will be the change management plan and project schedule and plan. Your outputs include an updated change management plan. To recap, Section 5.4, execute the change management plan. You must begin with execution, managing and monitoring implementation through 7 steps: the resource plan, communication plan, sponsorship plan, stakeholder engagement plan, learning and development plan, measurement and benefit realization plan, and sustainability plan. Part 2 includes modifying the change management plan as required. In the next video, we'll dive into Section 5.5, complete the change management effort.